wrestlers turned superheroes, superstars built from a rebellious youth, and an Oscar-nominated performance after a decades-long hiatus. These are the actors who got a second wind in the superhero genre. Anna Paquin achieved a level of success most aspiring actors can only dream about, and she did it her very first time on the job. Paquin's hard-to-follow screen debut came in 1993's The Piano, written and directed by the acclaimed New Zealand filmmaker Jane Campion. Campion casted a then 9-year-old Paquin as Flora McGrath, the plucky daughter of Holly Hunter's mute protagonist, Ada. Paquin's star-making performance was a frequently mentioned highlight when The Piano went on to become one of the most celebrated films of the year. She took home the Best Supporting Actress Oscar, becoming the second youngest winner ever at 11, and Roger Ebert called her performance one of the most extraordinary examples of a child's acting in movie history. The Canadian-born actor continued to land roles following her out-of-the-gate triumph, but most were in a featured or supporting capacity, and none garnered quite so much attention as The Piano. Then, in 2000, she re-emerged just as the superhero genre was making a resurgence. Paquin scored the lead role in 2000's X-Men as Rogue, opposite Hugh Jackman's Wolverine, and the film was a well-received hit at the box office. While Jackman got the lion's share of critics and audiences' praise, a now young adult Paquin was a capable scene partner. She went on to appear in 3 more X-Men films, then found a home on the steamy HBO vampire series True Blood. Craig T. Nelson worked as both a comedian and dramatic actor before being cast in the title role of the ABC sitcom Coach from 1989 to 1997. The comedy revolved around Nelson's Hayden Fox, the head coach of the fictional Minnesota State University Screaming Eagles football team. Coach often used real athletes as guest stars, but it relied on its sports-centric premise to delve into the personal lives of its characters, most notably the relationship between Fox, his daughter, and the other men on his staff. In 1992, Nelson won the Primetime Emmy for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Comedy Series. However, when Coach wrapped, the actor struggled to find opportunities befitting his award-winning stature. Besides Hayden Fox, Nelson is best known for voicing Bob Parr, otherwise known as Mr. Incredible, in Pixar's 2004 hit about a family of superheroes trying to live normal lives after the government attempts to regulate superpowered individuals. The Incredibles, which also co-starred Holly Hunter as Elastigirl, was a critical and commercial success. Nelson's chemistry with Hunter is, well, incredible, and his affectation as a bored-to-death suburban dad who secretly takes up the mantle of saving the day again helped the film achieve the perfect balance of social satire and heartwarming family saga.
Now our kids are in danger?
Hey, if you suspected danger, why'd you bring them?
I didn't bring them. They stowed away, and I don't think you're striking the proper tone here.
Nelson's career surged, and he followed up The Incredibles with 2005's The Family Stone before returning to the role in 2018's Incredibles 2. In between, he guest starred in series such as My Name is Earl, Monk, CSI New York, and Grace and Frankie, while starring in Parenthood and Young Sheldon. The quintessential example of a down-and-out actor using a superhero movie to relaunch their career is Robert Downey Jr. He's a man who will forever be synonymous with Tony Stark and Iron Man. The son of filmmaker Robert Downey Sr. got his start in smaller parts in his father's films. However, their fraught relationship would also contribute to Downey Jr.'s public fall from grace. In his youth, Downey Jr. received rave reviews for performances in movies like Less Than Zero and Shortcuts, and he was nominated for an Academy Award for his portrayal of the legendary silent film star in the 1992 biopic Chaplin. He was considered one of the most promising talents of his generation before addiction got in the way. After a years-long battle, Downey Jr. could finally declare that he was sober and got back to acting. He had been working intermittently in films like Gothica and Good Night and Good Luck, but with 2008's Iron Man, he made good on his potential. Almost overnight, Downey Jr. turned who many fans and critics considered to be a B-tier comic book character into an instant icon. With his charismatic performance, he didn't just catapult himself back into the celebrity stratosphere, he also jump-started what became the MCU, perhaps the most ambitious cinematic endeavor of all time. With films like Tropic Thunder and Dolittle, the beloved actor has hit and missed outside of the MCU, but there's no denying that the actor and the superhero genre greatly benefited each other. Chris Evans actually appeared in a few superhero films fairly early into his career, playing Evil X Lucas Lee in Scott Pilgrim vs. the World and Johnny Storm in the much-maligned 2005 iteration of Fantastic Four.
I think we have a serious problem.
However, after breaking onto the scene as Jake Weiler in 2001's Not Another Teen Movie, Evans was often typecast as a slightly obnoxious alpha male, which he'd later revisit as Ransom in 2019's Knives Out. He's also in the ensemble of the 2007 dystopian sci-fi film Sunshine, Danny Boyle's well-reviewed box office bomb. With this hodgepodge of early 2000s credits, Evans was not exactly an A-lister hitting the turn of the decade. However, that all changed when Marvel made him an offer he couldn't refuse. Evans' career received a huge shot in the arm thanks to his contract to appear in multiple MCU projects as Steve Rogers, starting with 2011's Captain America: The First Avenger. Over the next decade, the actor and his character became integral to the mega franchise. To balance out Tony Stark's snark, Evans imbued Steve Rogers with a level of chivalry and sincerity that stood in contrast to some of his earlier work. His 8-movie stint as Cap helped anchor the MCU through its first 3 phases, and the goodwill he earned playing Marvel's most patriotic superhero afforded him the chance to collaborate with some of the new century's most interesting filmmakers, like Bong Joon-ho and Rian Johnson, whenever he had time to put down the shield. Anthony Mackie is a Juilliard-trained actor with extensive experience on the stage and the screen. He made a name for himself with significant roles in well-chosen films such as 2002's 8 Mile, 2004's Brother to Brother, 2006's Half Nelson, the Denzel Washington remake of The Manchurian Candidate, and the sports drama We Are Marshall. He appeared in 2 Best Picture winners, 2004's $1 Million Baby and 2009's The Hurt Locker. In the latter, Mackie and his co-star Jeremy Renner were commended for their unflinching performances as Iraq War soldiers. While Renner's career took off from there with roles in Mission Impossible and the Bourne franchise, Mackie appeared in supporting roles in modestly successful movies like Real Steel and The Adjustment Bureau, as well as bombs like What's Your Number and Gangster Squad. He didn't really take flight until he joined Renner in the MCU as the Falcon in 2014's Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Mackie's involvement in that film, widely considered one of the best Marvel movies, led to a working relationship that's still going strong. Mackie's Falcon teamed up with Sebastian Stan's Bucky Barnes in the Disney Plus series The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and returns as the new Cap in the upcoming Captain America: New World Order. Since strapping on his Falcon wings, Mackie has also starred in Detroit and The Hate U Give. When the supernatural drama Lost took the world by storm in 2004, a few of its marquee actors were already famous faces. Matthew Fox was familiar to audiences from Party of Five, Harold Perrineau had a role in The Matrix, and Dominic Monaghan had just finished the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Evangeline Lilly wasn't a complete nobody. She had some guest star credits under her belt, but she became the breakout star of the series that dominated water cooler conversations for years as Kate Austin, a capable survivalist with a shady past. Though Lost waned in popularity and coherence by the time it concluded, many expected Lilly's skills to translate easily to the big screen. Her first project off the island was 2011's Real Steel. She followed that up with 2 appearances as Tariel in the Hobbit trilogy, but the relatively small role didn't catch on with Tolkien fans as she and Peter Jackson may have hoped. After 5 years of a downward trajectory, Lilly finally got a part that, at least in theory, would rival cool, tough Kate. As Hope Van Dyne in the Ant-Man franchise, Lilly could quip, flirt, and fight opposite Paul Rudd's Scott Lang. The character may not have reached her full potential as of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, but the Canadian actor isn't done with the MCU yet. Joaquin Phoenix never really went away. He's been one of the most respected film actors in the business for most of his adult life. However, after an almost unprecedented multi-year run of critically acclaimed and award-nominated performances in films like Gladiator, Walk the Line, The Master, and Her, working with top-tier directors such as Ridley Scott and Paul Thomas Anderson, he still had no Oscar to show for it. In between prestige projects, Phoenix also starred in M. Night Shyamalan's Signs and The Village. It seemed like he'd be able to maintain his status as both an indie darling and a legitimate movie star going forward. Then, the actor who made a career for himself playing oddball characters veered a little too far afield for his own good. The years after his 2013 Academy Award nomination were less than kind to Phoenix. He appeared in a number of smaller-budget, auteur-driven films, most of which received good reviews, but none of which made much of an impact. His reputation and professional momentum had also taken a hit during his bizarre involvement in and press tour for I'm Still Here. However, with 2019's Joker, Phoenix got the last laugh. The critically and commercially successful film defied the Oscars' bias against comic book movies, nabbing 11 nominations and 2 wins, including, at long last, Best Actor for Joaquin Phoenix. John Cena belongs to a class of entertainers who've transitioned from professional wrestler to professional actor thanks in no small part to the superhero genre. Dwayne Johnson might be the best known example, but time might tell that Cena might have had better instincts regarding the project he selected. Like Johnson, Cena first tried his hand at acting in action-heavy films, such as The Marine and 12 Rounds. However, he never became a proper action hero as Johnson did in movies like San Andreas and Skyscraper. Instead, he popped up in guest roles and cameos in things like Parks and Recreation and Trainwreck, establishing himself as something of a comedian.
It's John Cena, you're my hero!
Wait, you're Andy.
Yeah, I'm Andy!
From the information I got, I just assumed you'd be like 10 years old.
Writer-director James Gunn noticed and did for Cena what he'd done for fellow wrestler-turned-action star Dave Bautista in the Guardians of the Galaxy. He cast him in the Suicide Squad as Peacemaker, then devoted a whole TV show to him. HBO Max's Peacemaker, which is as gnarly, silly, and well-made as audiences expect of James Gunn, delves into the complicated character's backstory. It's been a winner with critics and audiences while allowing Cena to show off the full range of his abilities. Huy Quan was never a superstar, though he was a part of 2 iconic 1980s films. In 1984, he played the iconic Short Round opposite Harrison Ford in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and followed that up shortly after as Data in the Steven Spielberg-produced kids' adventure movie, The Goonies. He continued to act for a while, but in films and TV series that didn't have the reach of his first 2 jobs, in part because opportunities for Asian actors were limited, even for those who demonstrated their box office might.
When you work with Steven Spielberg and Harrison Ford and George Lucas, you can't go anywhere but downhill from there.
Eventually, Quan enrolled in film school at the University of Southern California, and occasionally worked as a stunt coordinator and assistant director. Then, the extremely lauded, absurdist multiverse dramedy Everything Everywhere All at Once presented Quan with a once-in-a-lifetime role that became his triumphant return. He plays Waymond Wang, the meek, soon-to-be ex-husband of main character Evelyn Wang. Quan excels at playing that version of Waymond, but since this is a multiversal superhero story, he gets to play a myriad of Waymonds, including the downright cool Alpha Waymond. Quan even delivers the emotional knockout line of the movie. In another life, I think I would have really liked just doing laundry and taxes with you. And rightly took home a Golden Globe and an Oscar for his performance. He's now one of the hottest commodities in Hollywood, and he's slated to appear in Season 2 of the Disney Plus series, Loki.